Greetings from Hong Kong, everyone. Welcome back and thank you for joining us. We have a favorite scene or a song that really moves us. We all have that, and a lot of us use these favorites for demonstrations. So we thought it would be an interesting topic to discuss how movie and music mixing engineers work to put that little magic in what we hear, and what it is that they try to achieve when mixing movie and music content. So time for some introductions. We have our usual expert, John Calder, joining us again today. He is currently the Director of Retail at Acoustic Geometry, based in Minnesota, and he has 4 decades of experience as a musician, a recording engineer, audio post-production mixer, recording producer, and so on. And he has in fact earned gold and platinum records. We also have a new special guest, Gary Bourgeois. Gary is a noted re-recording mixer who has worked on films like Captain America, The Avengers, Hot Tub Machine, and he has also worked on many successful TV shows like S.W.A.T, Bull, and Timeless, and he won an Academy Award for sound. Is that right, Gary?
Close, not, but in that world, I worked on numerous pictures that did win Academy Awards. So yeah, it's a team effort, you know?
Yes, exactly.
All right. We also have Jeff Clark, Director from Software Engineering at Audyssey. He's based in LA, California. We have Glen Stone, VP of Systems Architecture at DT IMAX, that's Xperi. So good morning, gentlemen, and thank you very much again. We really appreciate you making time for us. I'm now going to hand it over to our host, Phil, and he joins us from his office in Carlsbad. Over to you, Phil.
Hey, everybody. It is great to see you again. So it's good to have this big group of creative people together in one location because all of us, I was a wannabe. I always was mesmerized by recording engineers and recording studios and things like that. And it's nice to be able to sit here and doing our conversations over the last few months, we realized that there's a lot of people who have been involved in content creation, from Glenn to John, and now Gary, and even Frederick. So we figured that this would be a great opportunity for us to talk about when people create content, what are they doing? What are they trying to achieve? And maybe give you some tips on things that you can do to improve your system to get more, to better realize what the creative artist intended for you to hear. A lot of times these big mixes like this, we don't get these at home. They mix them for the big theaters, the big IMAX things, and that's, the big theaters, and that's kind of the thing that Glenn's company, Xperi, is trying to work through, is bring some of these bigger mixes and give customers access to those bigger mixes, right, Glenn?
Yeah, so the IMAX mixes for the movies are done when, for theaters or in far field, and then generally movies are near field when they come into the consumer's home. IMAX actually, our mixing for the home is still in far field. So when you set up at home to have the IMAX enhanced experience, you're supposed to set up big speakers, in your home theater. And we also, they're not the dynamic range, it's full dynamic range. There's no compression on the dynamic range as well, which is another thing. So it really is trying to bring the creative intention at the theater into the home, trying to really replicate that. But to your point, you also have to take some effort then in your home and create your home theater with the proper setup of, full range monitors.
Yeah, really distant neighbors.
The regular stuff in the consumer home just can't handle the level and the dynamics. Is that the reason why they make that other mix? Is that the main reason?
The interesting thing is, like, from my history lesson that I got the other day, early DVDs, they copied the soundtrack to the DVD and sent it off, and we got theatrical soundtracks on early DVDs, and we took that into the home, and then along came some problems with that. So the first thing we saw was like re-EQ, and just initially that was in AVRs and applied in the home, and everybody else who didn't have these kind of fancier systems just didn't care that much, or their speakers or TV or whatever it was reproducing, it didn't do anything in the top octave anyway, so it didn't matter. then along came DVDs that had EQ built in.
Mm-hmm.
And okay, that's fine. That's just EQ, and it's actually pretty appropriate for most home theaters. Not all home theaters, though. Some people have a really big real theater in their home, and that's not necessarily the right answer. So now people who actually have this kind of crazy theater can't hear what they really want to hear. And then things got even more interesting, and we got home mixes and home dynamic range and home all kinds of home things that none of which are good for anyone with a serious home theater.
Yeah.
They're not catastrophic, right? We still probably, like I was just saying, we don't necessarily want to hear the full dynamic range in your living room if it's in your living room.
I do.
You might.
Screw
You
the
want
neighbors.
the option. I think the right way to put it is you want the option, and there's technology in the AVR that
Yes.
can compress it.
There was one guy that headed up the DVD department at Sony, and he got really picky about the same mixers that mixed the theatrical version actually had to mix the DVD version, the home theater version, the TV broadcast version. And all the mixers at first were like really furious about this. Like, why are you forcing us to do this? Why can't you just have somebody else in your department do this, right? And his point was that he didn't say it outright, but he wanted to train us as to the differences and what was required and what considerations we should make. And I must say that after 10 years at Sony, consistently doing the downfield mixes for home versions and all that sort of stuff, we all actually became better mixers because of it, because we had to understand what was required for different scenarios. And we started incorporating some of that in our big mixes in the theatrical, so that we, first of all, so that we had less to do down the line, but more importantly, we started to realize that the translation, if we did have less to do down the line, it would translate better anyway.
Obviously, from the Audyssey side, our philosophy has always been that we solve these problems with technology, and we allow you to dial in whatever you want. So if you want less dynamic range, you turn on dynamic volume, which will intelligently control the volume control in a way that it doesn't have pumping artifacts and limiters and all these kind of terrible things. But it limits the how loud the loud bits get and how quiet the quiet bits get to something that maybe is more preferable to a lot of people in their home. Dynamic EQ, if you're never going to listen at reference at home, so we fix that for you. And then the EQ.
Some people watch movies really loud.
Yeah,
But this is a perfect segue.
I watch movies really loud, and I still would say I'm about a -5 sort of.
Yeah, I don't get.
I can't do a reference level either, but I want to tail right on what you were talking about. So earlier on, we also talked about the fact that there are all these modes, and one of the problems, of course, is back to what Gary was saying is, well, what has the consumer got in his room? We can't so much control that, but at least we can try to control that the AVR is in the proper mode, say for music versus a movie. And that's one of the things, just a plug for the IMAX Enhanced program, is we include a metadata flag that tells the AVR to put the AVR into IMAX mode, which means at least the AVR is now set up to replicate to the channels what the creator's intent was from the theater mix. Now the consumer can go ahead and change it, but if you leave it in music mode and then you go play the movie, then Gary, you'd be all upset because like, what the hell are they listening to?
And it's a fine art, because the capabilities of these big theaters, these big rooms, and what you can do with these rooms far exceed most customers' homes. And a lot of times, even when they like John, when we're talking about, you mix a really good, if you use the full potential of those big monitors in that studio, you're gonna end up hurting somebody else's speakers. I remember there's a record that I love. It's a Telarc record. It was one of the first CDs that came out, and it was, we're gonna make an uncompressed orchestra record, and we're gonna put cannon shots in it and all sorts of cool things, and it's gonna play down to like 8 hertz or something ridiculous like that. And it literally was a speaker destroyer, because You know, people would turn it up because there's a little itty bitty bell, and then a cannon shot would go off, and you would punch your cone across the room. You know, so eventually people said maybe you don't want a lot of dynamic limiting, but sometimes a little bit could be helpful. A girl with a guitar, don't do it. But if I'm doing the 1812 overture, maybe a little bit of dynamic compression would be a good thing. What do you
Maybe
think
it's
of
a
that,
good
John?
idea to bring up the point of music versus movies. Then we for movies we expect there to be subwoofers
Uh-huh.
where some of these things, so you get this low end and you don't blow things up. Whereas, true music, you didn't consider subwoofers, right? You just considered full range speakers that you would blow up.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. And many speakers are not full range. Home theaters, if your speaker's on full range, you got two woofers or a subwoofer there to give them a little bit of help. But a lot of times, old school stereo systems, people think their speakers are full range, but they really aren't. You know, and
Well,
because
I got to say, over the 40 years of mixing various and sundry, you run into people who have bookshelf speakers or they've got whatever system, and if they don't try and play it too loud, they get good 40 hertz out of that stuff, and they'll get a good 15, 18 kilohertz out of their tweeters. It's a well-designed system either way, and a lot of this satellite sub stuff, when it came out for film, worked sadly backwards into the sort of the hi-fi world. And you got people with, a 5-inch, quote unquote, I'm going to quote here, a subwoofer, a 5-inch subwoofer. And so,
THX certified too.
yeah, and it's,
Yeah.
Jackson. So, the problem has been that the hi-fi people back in the day had really nice, even a mono system had really nice speakers. And when we got to surround sound, all of a sudden now we're seeing these $100 home theater in a box speaker system that has 5 speakers and maybe a 6-inch sub. And it really has degraded the music side of it as well. I've been in people's homes that are listening on little computer speakers. It just drives me crazy.
Yeah. Well, Gary was brought up last time we talked about
With big speakers.
bass not in the center.
Well,
Back in the days when the bass not coming out of the center channel, unlike something like these, if you go to an IMAX theater or something, bass is going to come from that center channel. So but in the average house, you got this itty bitty center, and it seems detached.
well, if I may jump in for 1 second. When we mix for theatrical, we have a discrete sub. It's not, we never have bass management. And almost everybody's home studios has bass management. So there's a lot of low end that's coming out of the sub that wasn't intended to go there. What it's doing is extending the low end range of the left and right and the center. And what we're doing when we're mixing a picture is we only put stuff to the sub that we want to go to the sub. So there's a completely different interpretation of the low end in the home theater to start with because of that whole bass management theory. And also the center speaker for us, as I said earlier, it carries 80% of the load. And I just find that home theaters that have an MTM format center speaker that's horizontal, but it's an MTM, so you've got like 2 6s and a tweeter, that adds up to much more power than like a sound bar or whatever. You just can't get it. And when we are mixing those films, we are very dedicated about localization, where we're putting stuff. And that center speaker is really, really important.
Yeah. Well, yeah. Jim's all about the full range all the way around. That's why he has me humping around, 6 BP 9080 towers and a center channel with a subwoofer in it. Oh, and then we'll bring in a couple of subwoofers for LFA.
I do have a question about that though. Does that then mean that that you would tend to mix less bass into the left and rights, like that they would just tend to get less
No,
low frequencies, or do they just get what goes along with whatever it is that's being mixed there?
The discrete sub gets the sub information that we want to go down there on an explosion or a gunshot or whatever it is, right? And to tell you the truth, we quite often roll off the information that's going to that sub at around 90, 80 or 90 usually. So that it's not getting up into the honky area that the left and right speakers are carrying. We let the left and right go flat down to 30 or 40, but the stuff that's going to the sub discretely is rolled off at like 90 in the upper, and down as low as we can get it, which is down usually around maybe to 15, 10 to 15. And the idea is to make your pant legs flap and your chest concussed.
Yeah, yeah.
It's,
So that's the
not called the
LFE.
boom channel for nothing.
So as an
Call
example,
it
I
a
have
boom channel. Low frequency effect. It's not low frequency. It's low frequency effect.
Yeah. And like
so
I
what
said,
does it look like to mix like a cannon shot into like if it's like it should be localized left, it's in the left. So is it like what does it look like to mix that? Is I guess my question.
Well, I mean, basically, the sub information is non-directional. So the sub will carry the information low 90. If it's on the left, if the cannon's on the left, it's going to go flat down to 40 at least, and the sub is just going to fill in really down very much lower.
Yeah.
So it's
really
it's kind of like it's going to both. Just sort of a low pass version of it goes to the subwoofer, and the full range of the signal just goes left.
Yeah. An
Except for maybe at the very
the
bottom
enhancement
octave.
to the low pass, right? So if you were doing something like I was watching one of my favorite movies for that is there's a scene in The Unbroken. I love it. It's a bunch of it's a bunch of guys in an old World War II bomber, and they get and they're getting ready to bomb something, and they get attacked by Japanese Zeros. And there are explosions to the left of you and to the right of you. And if you have a full range speaker back there, it goes low. And then they add the LFE to it. So like you said, that pants flap, it's literally you're getting punched in the back from the bass. It's epic. And it's one of those demos people go, I don't think I need big speakers around all the way around me. And I go, let me play this one demo for you. And if you don't think you need it after this, we'll never have the conversation again. And they're just like, wow.
Quite often,
so what are you going to say, Jay?
When we're mixing, we're quite often we don't listen to, we don't put the sub material in until we listen to the mix on the full range mains, and then we add the sub afterwards. Because if we do it all at once, we don't know how much is in the mains versus that's in the sub discrete.
Very interesting.
With limited channels available, is there more sound effects and content going to the rear surrounds or the Dolby Atmos channels, especially nowadays? So we know which channels to prioritize. So in people's homes, not in a theater, but in their homes, if they have to make a choice, like a financial choice, I can do immersive audio or I can do back surrounds. Where should they go?
Yeah, he can only buy he can only buy like 6 speakers. Does he put heights in or does he put rears in?
Just go with a 5.1. Just go with a 5.1 system rather than a home Atmos system, which is going to cost you a lot more money. But if you've got a good solid 5.1 mix and a good 5.1 system at home, that's going to give you the experience you want, and it's going to be telling you the story, because there's a whole lot less going on in the surrounds and the ceiling than you might expect.
Yeah. So cause we talked about that doing it's used whenever they need. Every once in a while there's that bed layer, that's the 5.1 7.1 bed layer, and then they'll use some of the effects, but the bed layer is a large majority, almost like you said, 80% of a large majority of the stuff comes from the center. A large majority of the stuff is still being utilized by the traditional 5.1 and 7.1, and then they started adding effects to it. So you should always, if you can, do it that way.
In the typical home theater, if you've got 7.1 already, what do you do next? What two
Front
speakers do you add
heights,
to that?
rear height, front heights.
What do you add after that? I'm curious what Gary has to say.
It's sides and ceiling.
Okay.
That's
Yeah.
actually really interesting because that actually matches with my experience as well. As the sides are a big component of
So you're
because of
saying
It's a
5.1.
it's a big it's a big component. On the other hand, when we're mixing, we find quite often that the sides and sometimes the point two, which is a stereo strip of speakers on the ceiling, quite often do a lot of masking. And so quite often we diminish the amount that we use going to the sides and that strip of stereo speakers in the ceiling.
Yeah.
Especially
So
in music, because it just becomes a sort of like a mask.
So say you had, I could buy 7 speakers. Would I do a 5.1.2 or would I do a 7.1? Which one would you prefer?
7.1.
7.1.
7.1.
Okay.
At the end of the day, isn't, like 32 channels or 200 speakers or whatever, isn't that because of the size of the venue? So if you've got a theater that'll seat 500 people, you're going to need 80 bazillion speakers. Yay, us. But if you only have a theater that's an average person's home, or let's say an above average person's home that'll seat 20, are you really going to need more than, 7.1.6?
That's why there's Dolby Atmos home theater. That's a format that's different than Dolby Atmos theatrical. And this room that you're looking at right now, we had like 50, I think it was 58. That's a big room. I mean, at home you're going to have 6 if you're lucky.
So Gary asked a really interesting question. When you're not mixing a movie or mixing music, what are you running? Are you running a 7.1? Are you running a 5.1.4? What do you listen to when you, or do you even at that point?
Personally, I listen to 5.1, but I also just have a beautiful stereo pair. I actually designed and manufactured my own speakers that certain scoring mixers use and stuff. And they're beautiful. And I like just listening to symphonic music or opera. In my car, I'll have like, Rolling Stones or whatever and kick my ears off. But at home, quite often I just listen, well, more than quite often, it's like almost exclusively classical music. And by the way, last time I was in Moscow mixing at that theater, I got to go to the Bolshoi opera while I was there. And I got to tell you, it just knocked my socks off. It was unbelievable.
Yeah. And you have, and actually you're sitting in your home studio. So how many channels are in your home studio?
It's just 5.1 at this point. Yeah.
Yeah, my system is a weird pastiche, I guess. A friend of mine designed speakers, and he designed some for, I think the company's called High Emotion Audio. It's really a bad name. Really nice speakers. So those are crossed over 120 hertz up. Those are my left and rights. And then I have passive subs right below those that are phase aligned through a digital crossover at 120 hertz. And then those are driven through separate power amps. The receiver drives the center and the 2 surrounds. And the center channel is actually a large Advent walnut that is part of my Advent collection, on which I mixed the aforementioned gold record. And I really love those speakers, and I've got those for surrounds as well. And that's about it. I really try to listen to music on 2 channels, unless it's a DVD audio surround mix. And for that, I do really listen to just 5 discrete channels with a sub. So I have subs on my left and right, and then I have a separate 15-inch powered sub for the LFE channel that only gets LFE.
Yeah.
So we have another question. I got one more that I need to ask.
What is the question?
And what frequency range do you mix for Atmos speakers? So the actual elevation speakers, Gary. What frequency band do you send to those?
Are they full range? Are they not full range?
They're full range. Those are big ass speakers up on the ceiling. God, I mean, the ceilings in a lot of theaters had to be, what do you call it, buttressed, so that they could carry the weight. Those are big full range speakers. Like in the big rooms, there's subs that are at the back of the room that are up high also. So I mean, it's like you got a lot of power to be able to play with.
This theater right here has multiple subs in the ceiling. There's 1, 2, 3, 4 subs in the ceiling.
Yeah.
If you're going to buy a multi-channel system, Gary, where does a large amount of the information come from? Which speaker is one of the most critical?
Yeah, most people really keep thinking of the left and right as the main focus, because stereo music has been, you know, de rigueur for a very long time. But in the film business, you know, 80% of the sound comes from the center, and it has to have power, it has to have resonance, it has to be able to speak well, because it's carrying the vast majority of the load. Most of the music, yes, coming out the left and right in the surrounds, and you know, some in the middle, obviously, but all the, you know, the gunshots, the door open and close, the you know, the people talking, all of the talking is all comes discreetly out of the center speaker. And if you have a center speaker that can carry that weight, that power, that load, then you're going to experience things a whole lot better.
Yeah, and the reason why I brought that up is a lot of times I see people spend most of their budget on their mains, and then they just get, you know, what's the least expensive center that goes with that? That's it. You'd be much better off spending a little less on your main and stepping up on the center channel, especially if this is if you're planning on using this for a lot of movie and multi-channel stuff, step up a little bit on that center channel, okay? Even if you got to step down a little bit on your mains. You know, if it's 90% music, that's a different story. Okay?
Those are the same people that are complaining about not hearing the dialogue, as they've got a puny little in the middle. It's like, give them a big speaker, man. You'll hear the dialogue.
Yeah, how come the voices are so low and all of the explosions are big? You know,
yeah, the voices sound small. Well, your speaker's small. Sorry.
Yeah, and stop, and how come, you know, and oh yeah, stop going. Jeff had those. Don't go back in after Jeff's equalized your surrounds and crank them up, and then complain that you can't hear the dialogue.
A lot of this has to do with the TV screen. A lot of people will put the screen on a credenza or something, and it's, you know, 16, 18 inches off the floor. There's not a lot of room for a speaker, so they started laying speakers sideways. Then they started putting a couple of 5-inch cones next to a tweeter, which gives you all kinds of phase issues. Really, a great recommendation for a lot of people is raise the screen to a little higher height, and then use a really good speaker in the center. Start thinking about sound before you put the screen up on the wall.
The best horizontal centers are MTM design, because you get a lot of power out of like a pair of 6 or 8 inch woofers with a tweeter in the middle. In the MTM acoustic design of the speaker, you'll get a lot more power out of that, or a coaxial.
Okay.
Coaxials are nice as centers.
One more note with those bounce speakers. Both the codec and Audyssey are aware that those are bounce speakers, and they are treated a little differently because of that, and because of the reverberated sound that you're getting off of a bounce.
Jeff, Carson was asking, where do you make that adjustment between reference and the Audyssey curve and the flat curve? I know that's in a menu system on the Audyssey, but you can also do it from the app, right?
You can do it from the app. You can do it from the remote. You can cycle through. Or you go into the Audyssey settings on the on-screen menu.
Yeah, the new receivers have what's called dual speaker preset, and you can actually make that. You can have if you wanted to, one of your dual speaker presets could be near field mixes, far field mixes, if you wanted to, and you can actually go in and make 2 different. That's one of the new things that's available on Denon and Marantz. So I got to give them a little bit of a shout out.
Would you recommend different kinds of speakers for IMAX DTS-X as opposed to Dolby Atmos or the classic DTS-X or OO3D for a home cinema?
The dispersion patterns for both DTS-X and Dolby Atmos are very similar. Okay, a lot of times the drawings look different because of where the person put the drawing on the couch. Whenever you look at DTS, they always say it's equidistant, and they always put the couch right directly in the middle. If you look at the Atmos drawing, the couch is pulled back in the Atmos drawing, but they give you a range of speakers of locations. And if you put the couch in the center, it's identical to the DTS-X configuration. So I think so when it comes to the dispersion, it should be about the same. I mean, remember the height speakers are supposed to be direct. So if you're trying to use dipolars for that, you're kind of messing with the intent. So pretty much DTS-X stuff works with Dolby Atmos stuff. So you don't have to really worry about that, even if you're using the height enable ones that bounce it off of the ceiling. Would that be a correct way of saying it, you guys?
Like that makes sense.
Good speakers.
Yeah.
Good speakers will reproduce whatever the intent of the artist and the mixer better than more bad speakers. Just make sure that your speakers are as full range and phase coherent as possible.
Okay. Yeah. And
An
there's another one
that hasn't come up or that might be relevant is if Audyssey transfers two different target curves to your AVR. You get a flat and an Audyssey curve, and the Audyssey curve is a theater compensation curve. So it's more of kind of taking that far field to near field or to midfield adaptation. And so on the IMAX enhanced discs, you might find that you like the Audyssey curve, whereas in a lot of the other discs that are already remastered, remixed for home, you might find that the flat curve is more what you're looking for.
So you have the ability to try it out. Okay.
Yeah.
Here's another
thing.
Yeah, here's another Atmos question, and they were asking, Karsten was asking about the Atmos speakers, the ones that reflect off the ceiling, are they extreme near field? So this is what I kind of said. I said, if you go to a big Atmos or DTS-X theater, that ceiling in a theater is way the heck up there. So those speakers could still be 4, 5 meters from you, 8 meters from you. So depending on how high some of these ceilings are, so it's still a far field mix for those big ones up there. And at home, you're probably just going to mix them the same way as you mix your traditional surround. So if you're mixing if you're doing in either near field or midfield, would that be kind of correct? Whether you're bouncing them off the ceiling, would that be correct for the home?
It's surprising. I freaked out when I first heard the sort of Dolby home theater with the reflections off the ceiling and all that sort of stuff, and I thought this can't possibly work. And then I sat there stupefied how good it was, Yeah. And also there are a lot of people are buying sound bars these days. I had an experience with a Sennheiser sound bar. Now it was not cheap. It was a good, expensive sound bar, and it sounded really good. But then it sort of falls off very quickly, where sound bars just don't have the power that a good hard center can give you in a good, 5.1 or more setup.
I want to ask a question, and Frederick, can you help out with the name? Is it Simon?
I would say Simon, yes.
Okay.
So he basically wants to know, and that's a question for Jeff, I think. We have a lot of dealers bringing up the Anthem ARC calibration as being good. Is there any benefits of the Audyssey system over theirs? So I know IMAX is using Audyssey.
Oh yeah, that's a very friendly question. I'd have to go and review it. I can tell you, like, I know our system has phenomenal resolution if you're talking about like the XT32 system. I don't know if they have sub-EQ HT or something like it that calibrates your multiple subwoofers, since as we've discussed here, we have one LFE channel. And if it's reproduced by multiple subwoofers, they still should be treated as one LFE. So I mean, I can go over like benefits of Audyssey, but I can't really tell you like, and those are some of what I think are the high points. But I don't have a direct comparison in front of me of what they're doing.
And while we're at it, Jeff, what's crummy about Dolby?
Yeah.
No, don't you mean Glenn?
I'm completely.
What's scary
Yeah.
about Toby? Let me tell
John,
you.
I think you wanted to ask Glenn that one.
We're insulting everybody. We're insulting everybody tonight.
Yeah.
All right, let me ask a different question from Simon.
Actually, I have to correct. It's Shimon. So
Shimon?
sorry for butchering. You just send a correction. So I'm gonna attempt again. It's Shimon Gorniewski. There you go.
Nice.
All right. I
I'd
had
say,
no
I would-
chance on that.
If you do want to send that question to Audyssey support, we can probably give you a little more information.
Detailed,
And
yeah.
see what
There
we
you
can
go.
do there.
So, Phil, if we all go over to Phil's house
Mhm.
and he turns on his theater, I know what he's going to play.
Mhm.
Okay, I know what he's going to play, and it's already been called out. And I disagree. If you all come over to my house, you know what I'm going to play, right, Phil?
Yes, I do.
Right, for theater. So the question is to Glenn, John, and Gary. If we all come over to your house and we're having a couple of drinks and you take us and you're gonna play a movie for us and you're gonna play a music track, what would you play to impress us, obviously? Or something that you think sounds that is just like, yeah.
Amazing.
So for music, I'd play some ZZ Top. I always liked the crystal clear when he's banging the drumsticks together and stuff in some of the ZZ Top tracks from way back when. And then, well, I don't know. Dare I say we watch a Michael Bay movie? Or I don't know. What was it? There's the go ahead.
I was just going to say, I've had people over, and we used to have before COVID hit, we used to have bacon, whiskey, and rock and roll nights.
Nice.
So we'd make a lot of bacon, and everybody'd bring some bourbon or a single malt or something over. We'd sip it. We would not get crazy. And we'd watch some rock and roll movie, and I don't think there's much better than two movies. It Might Get Loud, which is just a brilliant movie.
Jack Black and those guys.
I love that one.
And
It's my favorite thing
Celebration
ever.
Day by Led Zeppelin at the Oz is a modern concert miracle. It's just a brilliant mix. It uses the surround really well. That's a great one. And for music, as we've said before, I play Jennifer Warnes in 2 Channel.
Gary, you're up.
Devil in a Blue Dress, Denzel Washington. That not only was the score good, but for me, the mix, I did things that I'm really proud of that, nobody will notice because it's done well. The best mix I think that I've ever done that I like to play for people is Pleasantville. Pleasantville is a film that starts out like when they go back into Pleasantville, it's in black and white, and then it slowly becomes color as people become alive. And the vehicle, that as a vehicle for me to start out quite often with the music in mono and limited in frequency, and then slowly widen it out and extend this frequency range and bring it all around us. Matter of fact, there was a song that was originally done, At Last, it's called. And we added strings and whatnot and recorded them in 5.1. So it starts out mono in the car, and it slowly, as things become color as they're driving, it widens out, and then we add the strings and whatnot. It's just a beautiful vehicle for sound. And that, to me, I was really proud of. And also, it's just a really great film to watch. There's a lot of them. There's a number of them. 50-50, a film that I did called 21. There are certain ones that I'm proud of, aren't like the big bombastic, like you can't say the Ghostbusters or the Michael Bay pictures or whatever. It's expected to sound bombastic. and complicated and all over the place. But when you have creative films that are more subtle and you use the sound in certain ways that people aren't even realizing that they're being taken somewhere else, and when I finish doing a mix and I fade out and the people are crying, my own clients are crying, I'm like, good, finally I got to where I wanted. I made people do what the intent was, you know. So those sort of films, even for instance, a film called Searching for Bobby Fischer was about a little kid that plays chess. You know, the sound opportunities, surprisingly enough, were just like wonderful. And so when you maximize what you can do with those sort of sound opportunities, that's gold.
I play that Italian album actually that I did. That's some of the things that I've done. That the kick drum wasn't great, but boy, it was a lovely album. It was just a beautiful album. I still play it.
This movie.
There we go.
Zombieland.
Oh yeah.
This has lots of fun in it.
Yeah.
I'm
that-
in,
that-
Glenn.
Yeah, I think that's a winner too.
I'm a modest home theater. I've got paradigms all throughout, and I'm a 5.2.4 because the artistic intent of the room can't have sides. And you know, I like getting it works well. Yeah, I think the most important point from movies is to have two subwoofers, as we've talked, or more, as we've talked, to even out the bass as well as to get that low frequency effects that the sound guys put in there for us.
Okay.
So you're saying a 2.4 system.
Yeah.
5.2. So horizontal
2.4, left and right, and then 4 subs.
Yeah.
No. The middle one is the subs. So 5 is the horizontals, 2.2 is the subs, and then the next dot is your heights. So 5.2.4.
That's what I have, 5.2.4 in my house. Frederick, what is your movie of choice?
Well, I'm a church organ fan. That's a previous life, maybe some, I don't know. So I very much like Interstellar, which is with music from Hans Zimmer, because he's using real church organ recordings and then mixes this together with extra beds of synthesizer and other electronic instruments as well. So for me, Interstellar, and there's a lot of passages that are very impressive in that scene. But for 2 channel, there's a bit of everything. I've done all sorts of. I'm a Pat Metheny fan, so I would play some Pat Metheny concert, for example. Yeah.
I hope we can get the IMAX cut of Interstellar, and then we'll have full dynamic range of your church organ.
Are you guys going to do an IMAX enhanced version of Interstellar?
I don't know. I'm not in the content side of the company, but
I would buy that.
we would get the dynamic range.
I would buy that and ship it to Frederick as a present.
Yeah, that's right.
Glenn, the proper
Have you
response
heard the
is
pipe organ at Notre Dame? You ever listen to concerts at Notre Dame?
I would love to.
I've been there and heard it.
That pipe organ in that church, once they fix it again, is one of the most literally earth-shaking organ. It's just a massive sound. Brilliant.
There's actually a organist who's called Jean Guillou on the Dorian label, one of the better recordings for church organ that are very impressive, and they're also done in several, including the Notre Dame.
Okay. And Jeff, last person to wrap up before we punch out today. What is your demos of choice?
Oh, geez. First of all, I have to thank John for mentioning It Might Get Loud. I watch that at least once a year.
I love that. I love that show.
It's a shame that Jack White's the rest of his music isn't recorded and mixed as well as that. There are some things you just can't demo a system with, and unfortunately, most of his albums fall into that. But I like Almost Famous is a good one. Bring that one out. That's one that I like. I like The Matrix. I'll still go back to that. That's an awesome one. Probably on DVD because I trust the mix on that. Music wise, I don't know. I'll have to pass on that one. There's so much that I listen to.
And
okay,
Jen
Jen,
came
you're
up.
up.
What movie do you like? She likes techno music.
I do
Oh
not. It's like some
no,
nice
and
mix of techno and
jazz.
jazz.
Deep
Techno jazz.
jazz.
No, I think as far as movies, definitely for me, The Matrix. The Matrix was the first DVD I ever bought, and I
Uh-huh.
remember. So that would definitely. And then music. Oh, I'm still like your '80s disco kind of person, so that's the kind of stuff I like.
Nice.
Oh,
Well,
I know, terrible.
actually, John was the record John did. What was that? Rufus and you did like
Oh yeah. Yeah,
that's one of record.
I was the assistant on that. It was Rufus featuring Shaka Khan. I can't remember the
I
album.
love that record. Actually, I have it on your thing.
Great
Actually,
album. A great
yeah. So
album.
great.
if you like,
It was awesome.
you know, my uncle plays for Earth, Wind and Fire, and he's a producer. So
Oh, wow.
a lot of those old things like that I absolutely love.
Yeah.
It's yeah, it just has the lips on the cover. I actually put it on your on your bio because I
Yep.
like that record. So
That
all
was
right.
a lovely album, and they
So-
were really great people, and she was something else. That girl
Something
could
else good, I'm hoping.
no, she's one of the nicest people, and she can
Okay.
sing just, oh my gosh. It's just it's
So,
amazing.
hey, Phil, Gary dropped in a really good question, sort of. And then Shimon has another one. And on Gary, I'm going to put you on the spot here, buddy. Any insider info on Matrix 4? Jen wants to know. That was actually, she typed that one.
But there was no Matrix 2 or 3, so there's a Matrix 4. I'm confused.
Well, you know, it's
sure.
the years.
Yes, she doesn't. She only says there's one Matrix.
And then
No
It's a
insights,
cold crowd.
no insights on
what's
my. It might not make it into the theaters, no matter what.
oh,
Well, good thing
yeah,
you
that
guys are
seems
giving
to
us
be the
all these
trend.
tips to get the movies played beautifully in our homes, because that is, you know, a real reality that we're all
It just
facing.
keeps right. It just
Exactly.
keeps changing.
Exactly.
By the way,
And then
if I ever listen to, if I ever, whenever I go to a room, one of the only pieces of music that is Dream Theater. When I play that left and right in a big room, if it knocks my socks off, Dream Theater, the best.
I used to set up corporate PA systems with The Bed is Burning from Midnight Oil.
Oh, I love that
Oh,
album.
Set
I
on
love
this
that.
big corporate PA system, and it
I love
put
I love that.
everybody in a much better mood.
Yeah, Midnight Oil. That's funny.
so
We're getting
one
near
more
midnight oil.
what's your next big action movie project, and or which director are you working with upcoming?
Oh, that's a good one.
I don't, there's, first of all, there's very little in production right
Yeah.
now because of COVID.
Mhm.
But I found out today that I'm booked on a big musical out of Nashville.
Oh, really?
Yeah, and that's going to be all of November for me. So I'm kind of looking forward to that. It's going to be it's it's a faith-based musical. So I expect maybe some gospel, maybe
I
some whatever.
love big gospel recordings.
So I got chosen to do it because of my music background, thankfully.
Where will you do it?
I work, and actually we just put in a brand new Dolby Atmos theatrical sound system in my room. It's a new system. I wanted to upgrade, and the room sounds killer. So I'm really looking forward to doing this musical.
We are going to have you guys come back because we're going to have to do a round 2. All of this information on these last 2 days has been outstanding. So guys, I'd like to thank you guys for coming. Hopefully, Gary, you'll want to come back. John's a regular, Jeff's a regular, Glenn's a regular. So hopefully, I think you enjoyed this and you'd want to come back and hang out with our group again. And I'd like to thank the Sound United training team for pulling this off, and of course all of our partners. So thank you guys again for coming, and hopefully you got something from this session, everybody out there in the audience, and take care, and we will talk to you soon.